One of the most haunted locations in Virginia is a small forest where strange lights and ghostly figures have terrified locals for over 400 years. Tales of missing treasure, wandering soldiers, and phantom ships have only added to its spooky reputation. So today, we dive into the haunted history of the Old House Woods. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the supernatural. I am your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
All right, we're talking about a location that's wreaking havoc on people.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do we just nuke the place? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, God.
You know,
Sudden escalation.
just like, sure, nuke it with like, doesn't have to be an atomic bomb of any sort, or nuclear bomb. You just put a bunch of holy water, have a bunch of popes bless it, the pope, and then
Yeah, we get about 15 popes out there.
do whatever they need to do. Bless it, put a cross on it, piss in it, and then just drop it on the place.
Always
You know what I'm saying?
urine with you, man. It's cleansing. Listen, this is when we fight back on nature. We say,
Yeah.
not today. We're not touching no grass, nothing green. We're staying inside.
Well, the thing is, I was like, I don't want to go out there. I don't want to touch this thing. I don't want to be near this thing. But then you mentioned treasure.
Well,
Well, so hold on now.
you getting pulled in?
What kind of treasure are we talking about?
Christian,
You know?
after all these years of ghost hunting, we could have lured this man in with the false promise of treasure?
I mean, you know, if I'm going to risk it, put a biscuit on it.
All right, if we're talking Popeye's biscuits, I'm out there. I'm out there. Listen, speaking of nukes, this is just a funny, not even funny, terribly unfun fact. Off the coast of, I think it's Virginia, if not South Carolina, there is a nuclear warhead lost in the ocean.
What?
Did you know that?
What?
Just off the coast, there is a nuke that was accidentally dropped. I don't believe it was armed. It's just there.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that's near this area. It's possible that some unlucky Sunday,
Wait a second. How'd he get there?
maybe that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll have to explore that.
It's not like a natural thing that just makes itself. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, a naturally grown nuke.
Yeah. Like that's, someone put it there.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Old House Woods. A lot of details to get into. This one's really fascinating, and I'll kind of talk about it, but it spans history and folklore and ghost stories, so I'm super excited to dive in. But before we do, of course, as always, some huge shout outs to our task force members over at patreon.com/redweb. It's the best way to support us directly now that we are our indie phoenix form. That's our costume for Halloween coming up. We've got Kelsey, Jerry Stratzma, Chase Martinez, TGYK94, Azrael, Clint from PS3, and Tucker Did It. And of course, Fredo, we got a lot of juicy things happening this month.
Well, they're getting they're eating good, okay? They're getting a lot of benefits, all right? We got the Movie Club Scare-a-thon,
Right.
We're doubling up on Movie Club, so we've got one every single Friday this month, all right?
You're not waiting. No. Every Friday.
We're shoving all these horror movies down your gullet, okay?
Shoving. We're pissing them right down on
Just
you.
making sure you're full so you don't get stuffed on candy is not good for you.
True.
And then also we got a 10% annual membership discount. So if you're like, well, I really love Red Web, I know I'm going to be listening to them and, for the next year or so, go ahead and save yourself 10%.
You ready to commit?
I was about to say, if you're not afraid of commitment.
Yeah. We say I do. So get in here.
Yeah. And then next week we have our Discord event. You can check out our socials and follow us at patreon.com/redweb for more details. That's going to be a good one.
Absolutely.
Always a good time. A little in-person live type of interactions going on there.
Yeah. It's always good to hang out with the buff minds of the buff scientists.
Yeah.
We've had movie watch-alongs. We've done gaming things.
we watch alongs where I put a lot of weird gifs in the chat while it goes on.
that does happen.
It does happen. And then if you really want to go even further above and beyond and support us, rep us, go to store.redwebpod.com. We got some merch. We got ghost merch. You got a hat, crew neck, sweaters, shirts, and a mug. Also, the Red Web Films posters that we had a while back. They're back.
They're back. Don't tell our old parents,
No.
but those were live event exclusive. but I've hacked the mainframe
We
and I
dug 'em
have
up.
those now.
We dug them up from the grave.
Yeah, I buried them in the backyard, so they didn't even know.
And no clue we hit him. Like a dog hid his bone.
Yeah. This was my buried treasure, and now it's yours, Task Force. But yeah, store.redwebpod.com. I'm tired of saying that URL wrong, so go ahead and bookmark it in case I do,
But just know it exists.
Just know it exists. But with that aside, I'm super excited to dive into this one, because what's going to be so fascinating about this particular episode is that it's one of those rare times that we can watch history become folklore and then folklore become the paranormal. It's almost like we're exploring the origins of a ghost story, which I've always stopped and thought about. Like, how did this house become haunted? How did this story make its way into culture and last through time? And we're going to explore that kind of through the lens of the Old House Woods. So we're going to start with as much as we could pull together on the historical background of this place, because I got to be honest, it's a bit spotty. If you go back to the 1600s, especially colonial America, it's a lot of word of mouth. But then we're going to move into discussing many of the ghosts and ghost stories that surround the Old House Woods, and of course ending with a few theories that attempt to ground what we're talking about, answer why people are seeing these strange lights, what else might be going on here. I have my own theory that I'm excited to explore. But with that, let's dive into the ancient history, or I guess relatively ancient history, of the Old House Woods. Starting back when the first European colonists began arriving in North America, a 50-acre patch of woods has been considered extremely haunted, building on a long-standing reputation of ghost sightings and spooky encounters in the area. Now, I do want to acknowledge that 50 acres isn't all that big. I believe it's less than 50 football fields. To kind of put it into perspective, it is a big area around it, but this particular stretch of woods is honestly not too big, though it is dense of trees. In Matthews County, nestled along the Chesapeake near the small, unincorporated community of Diggs, Virginia, lies Haven Beach Road. If you travel down this road, you'll find the small but densely packed forest known as Old House Woods. When European settlers began arriving in this area, they were reportedly scared of the dense forest because the trees blocked out all forms of sunlight, creating, even in broad daylight, a very dark environment. And this darkness only embellished the unknown of this supposedly new continent. The forest is supposedly named, by the way, after an abandoned colonial home that was built in the 1700s, also known as the Franny Knight House. It's unclear historically who Franny Knight might have been or why the house got that name, but as the story goes, the house was home to angry spirits, and it once spontaneously caught on fire, but just as it started suddenly, the fire went out just as suddenly and spontaneously. Years later, maybe this was foreshadowing, because the same thing happened, but this time the house burned completely to the ground. And supposedly the only thing that you can see of this house to this day is the overgrown foundation. Now, people have actually gone to this location. Many ghost hunting teams have investigated the area, and there is an abandoned, dilapidated house in the woods that many ghost hunters go to visit. Though there is an inactive ghost hunting group from Virginia called the SNS Paranormal Research Group. They claim that this is not the Franny Knight house.
Oh.
I couldn't find anything about where this foundation was, any photos of it, but we do have a photo of this particular house.
Oh. Interesting. That's something we haven't really realized. Everyone's like, this is the house. This is the house that's haunted. And then someone claiming that, no, it's actually not the proper house.
No, that's just something else. It's the haunted area, but not the house.
I mean, like, as you were talking about the different years and time has passed by, it made me think, I'm like, man, wouldn't that be crazy to just walk outside your house, and, like, into the street, look back at it, and then just rewind time to see what happened in that plot of land?
Whoa.
That'd be
yes
too much.
And no.
Yeah, I don't think I want to, but
Yeah.
also, like, it'd be tempting. And then here you are saying that this isn't the proper, like, plot of land. So I don't know. Like, I guess the only way you can really verify is that if things are happening, but then, like, if you know what I mean, like, if they're not happening, then
Right.
most likely not the spot.
Yeah, I think, like, this isn't that house. It's not the old house that the woods are named after, but it is a house, and the area itself is haunted, and so it is still likely that some form of activity happens there. especially since it's an interior kind of area. There's nooks and crannies for people's imagination to run wild, but Christian did give the photo there in the message board. Task Force, of course, will share this image online on our socials if you want to check out what this house looks like.
All right.
But of course, it's still standing.
Let me take a look here. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, that's just a 2-story house. It's got a...
That's just a man in a suit.
Yeah, that's a giant
Yeah.
man in a house suit. 2 smokestacks, I guess, off to the left and the right.
Yeah.
And it's just a 2-story house. I guess it's what, 3-story because it's got an attic or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like a standing attic maybe.
Yeah.
With the slanted roof
Mm-hmm.
or a ceiling.
Yeah, I guess that classifies a 2-story, right? You just have like an attic.
I think so. I don't know. If I'm selling it, that's 3 stories.
Yeah, well, it depends. But it's just smack dab in the middle of the woods. Like, this
Yeah,
is just
dude.
straight up woods. There's no sidewalk. The front lawn is the woods.
Right.
There's a giant tree that's growing right alongside the front door.
Yeah.
Like, if that thing falls over, the house is holding it up. It's not even going to like fall over and destroy the house. The house would literally just hold it up and it'd slide off to the side or something like that. It's that close. So,
Yeah. It's kind of like the house in Blair Witch,
Mhm.
that little like dilapidated place they come stumble into. That's what it kind of reminds me of. So I'm sure this is an old house that, whatever the dirt path or rock path that led to it has eventually just overgrown. And so now it's just smack dab in the middle.
I think what makes this so weird is that when we go to different locations, it's like an abandoned house or an abandoned hospital, etc. There's like a road that we drive up. You know what I mean? It might be like a paved dirt road or something like that or whatnot. But I mean, like, there's gates, there's fences.
You're a stone's throw from society.
Yeah, this is like, oh, hey, go into the middle of the woods where you can get lost and there's a house in there somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
that's really what this is, which makes it pretty unique.
Very, yeah. Now, this strange origin story highlights the very blurry lines between folklore and actual events for this location. Of course, again, it was very difficult to collate all the information as far as a factual history of this particular area. Now, we know a lot about the surrounding areas. The Chesapeake Bay was very active, and I'll kind of get into that in just a minute, but this is the perfect starting point in my mind for our journey into the Old House Woods. And the Franny Knight house, the story around that is just one of many spooky stories that litter this area, and we'll talk about more later on. But these marshy woods are known for many apparitions, but most popularly, ghosts of pirates and soldiers due to its history as a port and the shipbuilding that occurred here. So historically, this area was near many major and minor ports of the Chesapeake Bay. You have Yorktown, Gloucester Point, Mobjack Bay, to name a few. I hope I'm pronouncing that one. I don't know if it's Mobyak or Mobjack.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah, I know, right? But it's a bay very nearby. That was a more minor port. But this area is also home to the 3rd oldest lighthouse in the Chesapeake area. In general, the Chesapeake Bay was abuzz with trade activity and even pirate activity. So this is where I got to have fun, and I got to look into Blackbeard and a bunch of pirates to see what they were up to. Blackbeard did a lot of stuff, I think, in North Carolina off the coast. But reportedly, he had attacked a sloop just across the bay from the Old House Woods. And after his death, it is said that his head was cut off and mounted on a pole and placed near the opening. It's a very wide opening, by the way. I doubt you'd see it, but placed near the opening of the Chesapeake Bay as a warning for other pirates.
What?
Yeah.
That's the fate?
That's the fate of Blackbeard, yeah.
Oh.
A man, by the way, only in his mid to late 30s when he died.
Yeah, I guess like it's, if it's further enough back, right? Or it's just like, oh, you're old if you made it to like 50.
Right, yeah, honestly, but it's tales like these that likely laid the foundation for many of the stories that we're going to explore. And we'll talk again. I'm very eager to meld history with the paranormal here because it's two of my favorite niche interests. But according to the Chesapeake Bay program, which helps preserve and protect the bay, some colonists were friendly with pirates since they could purchase things from them that perhaps England wouldn't allow. They got the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a prominent factual history with at least pirates and tradesmen and soldiers in the area. It's not like it's all just made up in word of mouth, but it's just hard to figure out very specific details. And the Chesapeake Bay was also a perfect place for pirates to rest and travel to because it was kind of It was like an inlet off the ocean in case there was a storm coming through. Lots of rivers, inlets, coves that they could hide in. Lots of ports that they could trade at. I don't know if they would actually trade at ports. I don't know how pirates work, but, maybe you don't be flying the skull flag if you're rolling into Yorktown,
Right. But I mean, it was a hot spot for just a lot of activity.
True. You see a ne'er-do-well and then a goody-goody two-shoes sloop, they might have at it just out the coast and you take their goods. But with some of that history under our belt, let's talk about some of the ghosts of the Old House Woods. So building on the history of pirates, it is said that in the 1600s, pirates would bury treasure in Old House Woods. In one such case, an unnamed ship stopped there during a storm and then buried their treasure. However, when the pirates tried to return to collect their treasure, a storm sank their ship, leaving them stranded in the densely wooded marshlands. Now, over time, these trees have expanded and contracted based on the salt waters kind of coming in and out. There's tidal activity, and I was trying to look into all the geographical shifts over time, but suffice to say, the woods have expanded and contracted a lot. And that was another thing that made it hard to track the stories and history here. But suffice to say that they were stranded here in the wooded marshlands. And there are other versions of this story, some including Blackbeard or some other famous pirate, depending on the source you look at, killed this unnamed crew, maybe trying to seek that treasure, or this is maybe why there are spirits of pirates here, because they were killed in these marshlands. It's hard to say.
I think one of the worst things, two things. One, it's wild that pirates is still a thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude, pirates were still a thing into the 1800s.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess. Oh, you mean today?
No, no,
pirates
today.
are still a thing today.
No, they're still a thing today.
I'm thinking about eye patches, though. And hook hands.
Yeah. They're more sophisticated now, but no, they're out there. There's some parts of the seas where it's like there's just like transports and stuff. If you have boats that go through, it's pretty wild.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've also seen boats that put like barbed wire off to the whole rim of the bow, and it's crazy. So there's that to take into account, but also just being a pirate sounds rough. I don't know. I feel like it'd be like an episode of Survivor. You know what I mean? Or like I feel like I'd be on the show where I have to keep the social game strong, but then also anyone could betray me at any moment. So like, who's to say someone doesn't want to just take over and then run things? I don't know. Like, who's to say how loyal someone really is?
Yeah,
seems stressful.
You're like, I want to be the number 3,
Right. Yes.
I'm never in contention for the power.
Yeah.
I'm never a threat, but I'm also like, I'm able to suck on some of the lemons so I don't get scurvy.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sucking on lemons.
Dude, yeah. The life of a pirate was heavily romanticized with books like Treasure Island. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. But yeah, in the 1800s. And so it became this like, the Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp and all of that. But yeah, no, it sounds terrible. So after stories like this, it's said that the ghosts of these pirates would haunt the woods, endlessly cursed to search for their buried treasure. We've talked about residual energies and people kind of seeing ghosts that go through these patterns almost like it's an echo of what once was. So maybe it's just the echo of these pirates seeking their treasure, kind of cascading through time. But there have been countless sightings over the years, many, many years, of people claiming to have seen bands of ghost pirates in this area. And so, again, whether we know the history or not, it has been pretty clear that a lot of people going into this area have seen pirate-style individuals as ghosts wandering the area. And so maybe they're coming up with a story for it based on the historical presence of people like Blackbeard, or maybe this is a true story.
Pretty cool. Like this show where we just cover so many different things, we do so many different episodes, and I say this, but like now we're doing ghost pirates.
I love it.
And it's not like bizarre, it's just it's what we do.
I've raised the bar just subtly every time, so that way your conspiracy and paranormal meter just goes, yeah, this is normal.
Yeah, I'm not the same as I once was since the beginning of this episode. Since the beginning of this show. And when you first asked to do to join you in this endeavor, I didn't know about a lot. I wasn't as paranoid, but here I am,
I know. It started out because like, I'm like, all right, cool. He's like not scared, but he's like, why would I mess with it when it comes to ghosts?
Yeah.
And so I wanted that kind of heal energy, like, oh, what's he going to say to this? And now it's more like, Okay, I've studied enough of this material to know how to ask these questions and what to poke into. But it's still cool to see your reaction to these topics with a different lens now.
Yeah, it's you can go back to the earlier episodes and I was a lot more reluctant, but now I'm in, man.
I mean, if there's treasure in a biscuit, he's there.
It's true.
I think your confidence raised when we started to debunk, I think 90% of these things as fishing line or the cure-all of placebo effect.
I mean, that really does help. It really does.
So now that we give you answers, you feel you've got plot armor, you feel strong, you feel like I'm going in, I'm the guy in the field, Trevor, you stay back, right? That's how we're feeling?
Well, sorry.
Almost got him, Task Force. Dang it.
Yeah, sorry. I passed that duty off to Christian like a hot potato,
Hang on and wait. Hang on. There are other people on the team. Jillian, I think, is chomping at the bit to be able to do something.
Can't defend herself. All right. Well, before we kind of close out this particular angle, these ghost pirates, what's interesting to me, because Task Force, I can feel the hive mind's intelligence coming strong. With the knowledge of buried treasure is something that came to pass in the 1800s. Many books like Treasure Island, to name one of them, kind of romanticized pirates and pirate stories and built on this idea of buried treasure. But actually, there's been arguably maybe one or two instances. I think Captain Kidd was somebody who is said to have buried treasure, but there's a lot of political elements around him actually being a pirate or not. But what's interesting to distill it all is that on the whole, pirates didn't bury treasure, just to say it. And so it's really cool to see, like, if we go back far enough, where this kind of started, where the idea of burying treasure kind of started, and then how it manifests in modern times as like ghost stories of pirates trying to find their treasure. And I don't know, it's really cool to see how this story transcends 400 years. But moving on to our next, I guess, set of ghosts in the area. It's rumored that in 1651, King Charles II supposedly sent supplies or, again, perhaps treasure to the first permanent English settlement of Jamestown. It is said that due to storms, the supplies or the treasure unintentionally ended up at White's Creek. This should be a very familiar story because we covered the lost colony of Roanoke and the disappearance that happened there. And within that story, people came and went from the colony, but storms pushed them off course or prevented them from making landfall or honestly sank their ships. It's a very common thing that happened in this area. I think actually Blackbeard ran aground maybe by a storm. So this stuff was happening all over the place.
So even the best of pirates were getting got.
So White's Creek is a very small bay, but it's extremely close to digs. It's very much right at the center of what we're talking about, which makes this particular story so fascinating. It's one that actually centers on the actual 50 acres we're talking about. Now, in this bay, the ship was supposedly, again, carrying supplies or treasure and was attacked by bandits, and the supplies were then stolen before the ship itself sank. These bandits then, supposedly, like all good bad guys do, buried the supplies or treasure somewhere in the woods, maybe to kind of escape on foot quickly and maybe come back and get the heavy goodness later. In other versions of the story, some of the king's men actually got away and vowed to return to collect the supplies, but when they returned, that's when their ship sank during a storm. Again, depending on the sources, the story is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, we're going way far back. It's a game of...
Way far.
It's a very long game of telephone.
Very much so. I mean, news spread like molasses, and pieces of the story would be lost because you're taking ships down the coast, across the ocean, back and forth. And so what sticks might not be the full picture.
Yeah.
It might be just the more memorable parts. Who knows? But it is said that the ghosts of both the sailors and the bandits can be seen in the Old House Woods. They are said to be carrying green lights as the king's men dig for their treasure. So this is very interesting because I don't know how much we've covered of this. There was definitely, Christian, you've got a great mind on you. There was at least one episode where it was around a railroad track and there were bright lights down the railroad and in the forest. But this is a very common type of apparition people see at cemeteries, in the marshlands, and honestly near railroads, where you have a long distance on the horizon, floating lights.
I'm trying to look and see because I remember what you're talking about. I'm just trying to remember what the name of the episode was.
Yeah.
Oh, this is killing me. I think it was the Gurdon Light? Yeah.
Maybe the Gurdon Light?
Yes, it was. It was the Gurdon Light.
Yes. Oh, nice. The Gurdon Light. Yeah. And so that's one where a true crime event kind of turned into a paranormal event. I love when we can kind of hit two of our cornerstones in one topic. But yeah, so it is said that green lights are being seen kind of on the distance, and people see sailors or bandits among these lights as people are looking for this supply bag or the treasures, etc. Hey Task Force, I just want to take a quick second and thank you guys specifically. You know, this is normally where our ads are, but this week it's all about you guys. You enable us to make this show by way of supporting us over at patreon.com/redweb, as well as buying merch at store.redwebpod.com. So I want to take a brief moment to talk about what those are. We started uploading previews of Movie Club here in the RSS feed. That's a fancy word for the podcast feed, I guess. But that way you get a better idea of what Movie Club is. It's basically the same way we break down true crime and unsolved mysteries and all that sort of goodness. We do that with scary movies and horror films from classic to crap, and we break down the plot, but we also give our thoughts and have a good time along the way. So that is the exclusive show you get on Patreon. We also offer this podcast completely ad-free, and there are new benefits, including 15% discounts over at the store. We also upload exclusive bonus content. For example, we did the Randonautica app. We did an episode on that many months ago, many years ago. We decided to finally download it and actually get out, touch grass, get into the world, and we filmed that. Christian's mom recorded some Villisca Axe Murder House audio stuff, and it's honestly really strange. It's very paranormal. We tried to debunk it. We're very curious as to what you think. That's all available right now over at Patreon. I would be remiss if I didn't say that we are here in October, and so we're going hard on Movie Club especially. We're doubling up. The Scare-a-thon is amongst us. Right now, you can go watch The Descent and The Exorcist, but this week's coming episode will be Ginger Snaps. That is Jillian's episode. And then, of course, we're going to end the movie month out with Oddity, which is Fredo's pick. Anyway, lots going on at Patreon. Lots of new merch over at store.redwebpod.com as well. We got the Ghost merch. We have Polterknife. Baby Hands is refreshed. We have Pump Kid. Just a couple of fun names around the ghosts that we have up in the store. Some of it is limited because it is so relevant to Halloween. So it will be time limited all the way through November 1st at midnight if you want some of that. But otherwise, we have a plethora of ghost merch that will last year round. No matter what you want to get, you can represent Red Web in a more subtle way. But anyway, thank you again so much for supporting the show. It has been an absolute dream to be able to continue this podcast 100% independent of anything. We have no rules, no red tape, and that has been really liberating. And to know that we have you guys as our community members has been a fundamental ingredient to that. So thank you all again so much. I know I say that a lot. I don't feel like I can thank you enough. This podcast is brought to you by you. And with that said, let's get back into the mystery. But another well-known ghost in the area is called the Storm Woman. She is said to be a woman that glows bluish green and wears a white gown. And so we have another kind of disembodied, glowy light that is of that bluish green hue. And I want you to remember this because it will come back in one of the theories. But she floats above the trees and is said to let out a scream to warn people of nearby storms that are coming in. Of course, that's a wise move because in the past, a lot of ships would succumb to these storms and be sank and people would die in these accidents. Not much else is known about the Storm Woman or her origins. Now, interestingly, I know we had a really interesting episode not too many weeks ago about Jeff the Talking Mongoose, a paranormal entity mongoose that could have also been a family prank.
Yeah, there are pictures.
And the thumbnail for that one gives me a chuckle. But it is even said that the ghosts of animals haunt the Old House Woods. One of the very common ones is headless cows, but there have been ghosts of horses, crows, and in particular, 2 black dogs. Now, there are stories around these dogs in particular saying that these dogs chase people out of the woods and have been known to actually cause damage to vehicles, which I would love to see. That's tangible stuff right there.
What?
Yeah, but like some sort of dark dog-like creature chasing people out of the woods. And when I started looking more into the black dog, Christian actually noted that there are cultural aspects and folklore aspects to the black dog that span different kind of belief systems. But in English folklore specifically, the black dog can be seen as a supernatural entity and often is associated as an omen of death, and per Oxford University, tends to appear in places of electrical storms, execution, and ancient pathways. At least two of which, if not all three, kind of have a blurry history in this area. But less commonly, they also take the form of a benevolent spirit meant to guide travelers onto the right path and away from danger. And maybe that's what chasing people out of the woods is. Like, get away from this area. It's dangerous. I'll chase you back to your car.
Yeah, you'll get lost.
Yeah.
Man, I just don't want to be put in that situation, you know? Like, I don't want to be put in a situation where there's something that is unheard of and unexplainable, and then you have to kind of figure out on your own and make a best guess at that, whether or not to believe it, to trust it, to go along with it, to go against it, you know? Because it's just like you're in a serial killer's home and you run into a door and it says safe on the door. It's like, is it? Is it not? I don't.
One says safe and one says not safe.
Not
You're
safe, yeah.
Which one is it?
I couldn't tell you.
So one more story of a group of ghosts actually comes from the Revolution era. So after this story, we'll then move into more specific accounts and more recent memory from specific people about what they saw. But this particular legend, again, comes from the Revolution era. During the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, it is said that General Charles Cornwallis sent soldiers to Old House Woods to bury his treasure. We're all burying treasure in these mushy woods.
Yeah. At this point, you just start digging and you find someone else's treasure along
Right?
with yours.
Maybe if we blow up these woods to get rid of the ghosts, we might see some gold fly out.
Yeah. It's just like not the place to, we got to find a different spot.
Yeah, right?
The whole point is to have a spot that only you know.
This is my spot.
Everyone's got the same spot. Like, damn.
This spot's been hot for hundreds of years.
Yeah. Maybe stop going there.
Right. This is a holes situation. We're going to have to get out there and we're going to have to just start digging 5-foot holes every 5 feet and we'll find something.
Yeah.
But this treasure in particular was said to be gold, among, once again, other supplies that were along the way to Yorktown, which again was not too far away. I believe modern times it's like a 30-minute drive, but it's kind of windy given all the marshes. Now, this gold is also said to be in other places, such as Abbott's Creek in North Carolina, not too far away. But as the story goes, these soldiers were captured or in some way unable to return to General Cornwallis and get him his treasure back because they surrendered. They were either captured, died, surrendered, what have you. And to this day, historians and treasure hunters are still searching for the general's treasure. So there must be some level of truth to this if we have historians kind of seeking evidence of this treasure in the area. Now, some say you can still see the redcoats, the British soldiers, still searching for the general's lost treasure to this day. I wonder if any historians have ever bumped into one of these redcoats.
Yeah.
Then it'd be like a geek off. They'd be like, hold on, before you disappear, answer these questions. Is history correct? What do you know?
I mean, that's the way to do it. Maximize your time. Give them the elevator pitch. Get all the information you can.
How has that not existed? I want a historian's ghost hunting show right now.
Oh, yeah. Because in worst case, you just get educated because it's just a historian talking about the historic information of said place.
Yeah, I'm terrified.
And if you find the ghost,
I'm terrified, but I'm smarter.
Yeah. I'm terrified, but I'm educated.
No more, what's your name? Can you turn this light on?
Yeah.
So, what was 1781 like?
So it says here that you murdered 4 people in the record book. Can you confirm?
You got a really defensive ghost going,
no. Or just goes, I want my lawyer.
I plead the fifth. That's a good show. I want that.
That's a good show. That is a good show.
Task Force, if you see that happen out there, let us know. We'll get those spectral lawyers on the phone and we'll make sure that we have them to answer for us. But yeah, historians hunting ghosts for answers is an amazing hook for a show.
I love it.
All right, so those are some of the popular groups of spirits, some of the common spectral entities that have been seen. I'm leaving one out because I want to reveal it through the lens of one particular person. I teased it in the hook, but let's talk about it. In the 1800s, a fisher named Ben Farabee claimed that he saw a large ship coming towards him. So to paint the scene, he's out there, he's on his small little boat, he's fishing away, doing his job. Again, it's the 1800s. We don't know exactly when this went down, but he sees a large ship coming across the water at him, and he thinks the ship is going to crash into him. So he begins shouting at the sailors on deck, say, hey, turn around, I'm down here. You know, you've seen that with shipping, like one of those shipping crate ships, those giant things.
Yeah.
And small boats down below, they're just like, gotta get out of the way because they can't see you. Well, it is said that when this giant ship came to hit him, it actually went right through him and passed through him, and he came out the other side untouched, unharmed. And he also claims that he heard the sound of a harp the moment that they kind of passed through him, which sounds, again, very cartoonish, like the
Yeah, it kind of does.
But maybe that's why it's a thing. Maybe because it used to happen when ghosts would touch things. I'll be honest, if I was a ghost and it played harp things when I touched stuff, I'd be a really annoying poltergeist. You'd be hearing harps all night.
You just start strumming the hell out of it.
Yeah, or just like touching light switches that go on and off and play the harp.
Yeah, you say that until you run across someone like me, and then I get a priest start pissing on the walls.
Oh, then you hit me with it, and then I'm like exercised, but you hear a harp before I fade away.
I'm just saying.
So after this, the story goes on that the ship sailed through him, past him, and then flew up and over the land and over the trees. And then he says that he sees ghostly men and sailors descending on rope ladders down into the forest below. And others have said that they have seen boats like this, sometimes floating as high as 50 feet above the water, or sometimes the tree line. So we've got a Peter Pan, a second star to the left on till morning kind of situation where this ship is floating and flying, and then usually disappears in a cloud of fog.
Yeah, it seems like your typical Pirates of the Caribbean ghost story.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. You don't often hear about spectral ships, and this is one of the more vivid stories that comes out of this area. A lot of people have reportedly seen this, and maybe Ben Farabee here is one of the first people to have such a vivid encounter. But this kind of encounter happens all the way up through modern times. But speaking of modern times, we have a person named Jesse Hudgens in 1926, and they were having car trouble. Never want to have car trouble. This is the beginning of a horror film here.
Yes, it is.
And he claims that he saw a man coming towards him, or several men coming towards him carrying lanterns. They appeared to be wearing some kind of armor, which is very interesting. And so he turns, he's confused, he looks on, but then they kind of get closer. And as they approach, he's able to see them more clearly. And he then discovers that they're actually skeletons underneath the armor. Upon a closer inspection, he noted that some of them were actually carrying swords, some of them had shovels, some of them had tools and lanterns and things. They supposedly asked him, quote, "Is this the King's Highway? I've lost my ship." And instead of answering, he does the smart person thing and he flees the scene. But then, again, it's kind of like the movie The Watcher. He runs into the woods and gets lost.
Ooh.
And he kind of, wanders the woods all night until he finally rediscovers his car in the morning. And these skeleton armored individuals looking for the King's Highway are nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's no protocol. There's no YouTube video that tells you the 5 steps to avoiding a haunting or a ghost encounter.
Well, let's make it right now. What are your 5 steps?
Step 1, no means no.
Okay. No haunt, please.
Step 2, cardio.
Great. That's a great rule.
That's a good one. Step 3, be faster than the slowest person.
That's true. Go with a group is what that one is.
Yeah.
But the 3B is be the fastest one.
It's like 2B. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's like 2B.
Yeah.
Step 3, be feral when necessary.
Of course. Go for the eyes.
Yeah, you got to. 4, always have a full bladder.
Absolutely essential.
And then 5, always make sure to have your camera recording that has a low resolution on it.
Right. Take one of those early day GoPros that only records maybe 480, 720.
Yeah.
And then so that way you can capture something, because ghosts are immune to 4K, I've learned.
Yeah, you'll capture something. You won't be able to tell what the hell it is, but you'll capture it.
Yep, you'll have it.
And the audio will be very faint. and you'll barely hear anything.
It'll be like, there's water in the microphone, so it'll be real muffled, like that was the ghost yelling at me.
It's not great at all ever.
No,
and we have such nice you know what I mean? I think we're already at the point where everyone's phone is a really good high quality phone.
Absolutely.
But yet we still get these terrible like ghost video submissions that are just blurry and like shaky as all hell.
We talk about getting caught in 4K. I'm feeling like these aliens, these ghosts are always getting caught in SD.
Yeah. Maybe they want to be found, and then they just maybe they want the high quality stuff.
Come on, man, you've got a good camera. Yeah, who knows? All right, moving forward, we have a man by the name of Henry Forrest who tells the story of redcoats. Again, the British army men from the Revolution era. That's why they're called redcoats, because that's the color of the coat they wore. Little crash course history lesson. But Forrest was duck hunting in November. We don't know what specific year it was. Based on several of our sources, it just says November. While he's out there duck hunting, he comes across 3 black ducks. So apparently he's in a boat, and he gets out of his boat. Maybe he was on the shore or what have you. And he approaches these ducks to shoot. Again, I'm thinking you're duck hunting, you got a gun, don't walk up and blast them point blank, but this is the story. He walks over to shoot, and as he's approaching these 3 black ducks, they transform into British redcoats.
What?
Oh yeah, it happens. He's completely stunned, and Forrest then runs back to his boat, only to find yet another soldier already there. He then threatens this spectral soldier to leave him alone or he would shoot. And the spirit replied simply, quote, "You shoot and the devil's curse to you and your traitor's breed." Basically saying, if you shoot me, I will put a curse on you and all of your family line. And calls him a traitor because the Revolutionary War backdrop, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, this ghost might as well be the Van Meter visitor because Forrest attempts to fire anyway. And apparently he repeatedly blasts off, shooting to no result, right? Like he's just shooting a ghost. It's passing through, nothing happens.
Yeah, you're not going to make use of bullets there.
No. And much like Hudgens, he just runs away. He flees. I'm not sure if he ever came to any bad luck or if his family line was cursed, but that's where that particular story ends. And one more before we head into the theories. And this is a more recent story, literally like 10 years ago. This comes from a blog called Seeks Ghosts by a person named Virginia. They claim to be from Matthews County, which is the area we're talking about, and wrote in 2014 about a childhood experience. So at the age of 13, Virginia went to her house near the woods with her parents to check on a family friend. Not sure what the friend was doing in the woods, maybe they lived in the area, what have you. Virginia stayed in the car during the check-in and saw herself a large ship coming from the Chesapeake Bay with a gray fog. It then kind of lifted almost as if it's sitting amongst and on top of this gray fog, and it floated 50 feet above and stopped near the tree line. And the fog kind of continued to grow as the ship then faded away, disappearing into this cloud.
Huh.
And that is someone in a more recent time kind of talking about this Peter Pan ghost ship.
Yeah, maybe I've just been desensitized by the Disney Pirates of the Caribbean, but like, I wouldn't be completely terrified if it was a ghost ship.
Listen, ships don't like haunt. They just be.
Yeah.
It's the people on the ship I'd be kind of scared of, but I'm like, that's just an inanimate object. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, they just be.
Ships just be.
I would be more stunned than anything else.
Right. Like, I'm not scared of a UFO. I'm scared once the alien comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Once the alien comes out, or once I actually see some kind of skeletal figure.
Mm-hmm. Man, what if aliens were just like human skeletons, but walking around?
Oh.
Whoa, what if ghosts were aliens in some way? Okay, I'm getting too deep. I gotta pull myself back up.
I'm sure that's a whole rabbit hole to connect them.
But with all that, a lot of fantastic history and stories to talk about. But let's move into the theories. Of course, before we do that, I've got to acknowledge the elephant in the room. These could just be stories. I love ghost stories as much as the next person. I'm always seeking evidence. I am a realist, so I'll always debunk where I can, but things I can't answer, I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. So it could just be that these are fantastic stories, and I kind of approach that in my own personal theory at the very end. But it's hard to ignore some of the common things seen in this area, specifically those bluish green lights that are seen kind of in the distant horizon. Those have been seen all over the world in many hotspots, and there are kind of practical answers as to maybe what that is. Is that a natural phenomenon? How is it that it's there, etc.? And is it getting conflated with the paranormal?
Yeah, is it just like a combination?
I mean, like ball lightning, right?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it, but apparently it's lightning that takes the form of a ball and it's like an orb and it floats around, and it's super rare, but it's an actual thing that can happen. But I don't know because I haven't read enough about it. But
Yeah.
something like that.
Just think about how many scientific things, right? Like that are just rare but can be explained scientifically, that are natural things, that are natural occurrences, and people like, oh, it's a curse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, just like, this is an extreme example, but even a black hole itself does some real funky stuff, but they exist.
I mean, people thought though, the Earth was flat.
And it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not falling off of it.
All right. Okay.
No, you're right. People thought it was flat. People thought it was not heliocentric, but whatever the Latin prefix for Earth would be, but like Earth-centric, right? Mm-hmm. And that the sun orbited us. I mean, there's always some level of unknown that eventually becomes known and demystified. And maybe this is just corners of one of those things. But some people believe that these marshy swamplands are the cause of the ghost sightings in the Old House Woods. And this isn't going to approach the exact angle I thought. There is a particular angle I'll address towards the end, but it has been theorized that ghost witnesses may have been exposed to hydrogen sulfide, a gas which can be produced in swampy water, in addition to well water, volcanoes, and some manufacturing processes. I'm sure you've heard of it before. But prolonged exposure to hydrogen sulfide can cause symptoms like nausea, anxiety, eye irritation, and trouble breathing. It's possible, in this theory, that visitors could be exposed to marsh gases, sometimes called swamp gas or bog gas, and this contains hydrogen sulfide, in addition to methane, carbon dioxide, and phosphine. However, the primary gas in marsh gas is methane, and it is produced by microorganisms in the water. So it's possible that people are having light side effects to breathing in some of this organic gaseous material, but the theory also extrapolates the idea of, well, maybe because you're breathing some of these gases, it puts you in a low oxygen environment,
right,
where your body is kind of lightly suffering from hypoxia, which then can create symptoms kind of similar to hydrogen sulfide poisoning. Obviously, more extreme cases would be like blue skin, dizziness, poor coordination, impaired judgment, etc.
But they can be having mild symptoms, right? And then causing hallucinations or whatnot. I mean, see, yeah, that's the thing, right? That's the factor. And you're not really gonna know if that's like a key player unless you grab a bunch of buff scientists with their beakers and their instruments to go out in the field and like measure that stuff out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also like, it's totally possible, but again, I'm not a swampologist.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is just my common sense brain pretending it knows more than it does, but I don't know what kind of concentration, like you said, unless we have somebody out there measuring the concentration and actually trying to validate, could somebody have these symptoms? Could they hallucinate because of some of these swamp gases? That's something to be determined. But either way, hydrogen sulfide poisoning is a possible answer to many of the spectral sightings in the area. And another angle one can take on this kind of this organic gas, especially when you look at methane, methane burns blue. I'm not sure what hydrogen sulfide or any of these other gases burn, or if they burn, what color they would be. But methane burns blue, and I don't know. So my brain wants to say, if there happened to be a particular concentration of this gas in an area and somehow naturally ignited, or I don't know, could it kind of burn in the air and create these bluish green orbs that people are seeing, these lights? Again, there's a lot of gaps that I'm skipping over in such a process, but it's at least the start of an angle. But I don't know. It's an interesting angle to look at. I just don't know nearly enough about that kind of geographical natural phenomenon.
Yeah, it's cool though to think that like, hey, it could literally just be the environment itself.
Yeah. I mean, even just the environment, the way it looks is haunting, you know?
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about that.
It's not a great environment you want to like look at and be a part of.
That house is abandoned for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I haven't really seen anything like it. It's like literally in a house that's just like you lifted it from civilization and just plotted it in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. Now, another thing that's been pointed out across many of these stories to create a new theory is that many of them happen during summertime. And it's been theorized kind of partially because of that it could be what's called ergot poisoning. So ergot is a type of fungus and it can form on any sort of grain, but in particular, it tends to show up on rye. So if you make bread out of that, you'd have contaminated rye bread. And that usually shows up if you're not storing it properly, etc. But if you make that and you eat it, you would kind of get this ergot poisoning, and it includes hallucinations in addition to muscle spasms, rigid flexed limbs, severe diarrhea, many other things that aren't discussed in the story, but people have centered on the hallucinations and the fact that ergot poisoning is more common in summertime because that's when the fungus is more active. And so I think that's a really fascinating idea. That's something that has definitely plagued colonialists way back in the day, but I don't know about modern times. People seeing the same stuff, and again, unless it's like the old placebo effect, we call it, where, well, they saw it, so I see it, that you're primed to kind of see similar ghosts, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, that does make me appreciate that I live in modern times, because someone somewhere, all the things that's like, that's bad for you, don't do that, don't do this, etc. It's like someone at some point experienced, I mean, not someone, many experienced that at some point or didn't know better, like with lead and all that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, sure, yes, years from now, people are like, I can't believe they stuck their phones right next to their crotches, and
Don't say that. Don't make that a thing. Is that a thing? Oh man,
I'm sure it's a thing, dude. I'm sure
that's exclusively where I put it.
Yeah, I put it right. Yeah, I buy pants that only have the pockets right on the crotch,
like a cup.
Oh God,
it's safer.
It's a lot safer. Try stealing that.
But here's the thing. I think it's a fascinating theory,
Yeah.
Ergot poisoning.
Yeah. I mean, it's you're taking the environment and just like natural chemicals in a way, and having that be the theory, which is something that's rare. It's not something we hear too often.
Absolutely. No, I love the tangible, practical answers to these things because many people want to just like, it's nothing. You're just making it up. It's not real, etc. And I'm sure that is a vast majority of ghost stories. But it's the few that are hard to explain that really make this whole arena so interesting to me. And you got to believe that at least someone somewhere is feeling something or seeing something that they just can't explain, and there has to be some explanation for it, whether it is ghosts are real or maybe it is hydrogen sulfide poisoning. But either way, that's the kind of sliver of the pie that I'm looking at, not all the ones that are just kind of like, well, they're just making it up because whatever. Because there's got to be something going on with so many stories. You got to think that someone is seeing something for some reason,
as opposed to just everyone's getting the same dose of something.
Right. But that's kind of where my theory comes to play, is this interesting, especially for Old House Woods in particular. We're looking at the history, we're looking at then the folklore that develops off that history, and then we're looking at modern ghost stories that build off that folklore, that builds off history. This could be a case where history is simply just sparsely documented, and it's more word of mouth. Thus, the current trends of the time are able to leave a bigger impact on what we remember. For example, in the 1600s, a lot of excitement with the discovery of the New World and colonists coming over and moving in, and there's new strange things happening, new places to explore, trade, pirates, European activity all over the Americas, etc. But not all of this news and all of this excitement makes it in full form back and forth across the ocean. Ships are sinking, colonies rise and fall, Roanoke disappears.
Yeah.
And this creates a foundation for all of these stories.
Yeah.
And then in the 1800s, the Victorian era, it kind of romanticizes the idea of pirates and the image of buried treasure and vicious fights and
adventure.
And so it kind of adds more to what happened. It might embellish some of these stories. And then in modern times, here in the 2000s, we love ghosts and aliens. And so now we're kind of adding another layer on top of these stories. So history becomes legend, becomes paranormal.
Yes.
As we start to go, there were pirates here, period.
Right.
Now, those pirates were burying treasure, period.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the spirits of those pirates want to get that treasure back. And it's
what do pirates do? They kill, they loot, they plunder, they kill, they stab, they betray, and then so obviously they died here, and then
and so their spirits linger on, and it's really cool, and it's not to disarm any of what people have seen here. I would still love to go to a place like this and see if there is something to the practical kind of answers. But I also think that there's something really impressive about watching a story like this move through time.
Yes.
And again, it's like the invention of a ghost story. It's cool to kind of theorize, maybe there aren't ghosts here at this spot, but it doesn't disarm the level of intrigue when you watch the etymology of all these stories. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a cool thought for sure, and how it all trickles and it just all gets lost to time.
Mm-hmm. And 200 years from now, they'll probably look back on us with our plastic and cell phone crotches and young AI.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
They might think that we have become computer programs. We might become ghosts in their future tech. Like, there was a ghost of a young boy reading comics on my hologram TV.
Yeah. Oof.
I can't possibly fathom what happens in 200 years, because when you go 200 years ago, they're talking about buried treasure and pirates. You talk about 400 years ago, they're making forts out of trees and log cabins. Like, time is weird.
Yeah, man. And time is just ever going, ever present.
Mm-hmm. But that has been the exploration of the Old House Woods. We're here deep now in October, and we're going to continue to explore some spooky stories, kind of the spectral edge of the topics we like to look at. But yeah, any final thoughts on the Old House Woods, Fredo?
Another unique one,
Mm-hmm.
I like that's at the house in the middle of the woods. I like the kind of like the chemical factor. This one's more pirate ghost like, which is cool.
Lots of pirates.
Yeah. So it makes you think that, man, like imagine like thousands of years from now, are we gonna get like space ghosts or something like that? You know what I mean? Like,
honestly, ghost aliens might become a thing.
Yeah,
haunted moon.
Yeah, haunted moon, ghost aliens. I mean, we have technology taking a play. We had emails, right, from someone that has passed. So yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where things go and evolve way past our time.
Yeah. Honestly, now that you make me think of it, 200 years from now, if we're colonizing the moon, I've always joked about having a piece of the ghost of Neil Armstrong from the USS Hornet.
Oh, yeah.
But like, this could be an interesting time where that was like 60 years ago, give or take. And in another 140 years, if we're colonizing the moon, it could be that people say, I saw Buzz Aldrin hopping around on the moon next to Neil Armstrong. Like,
It really could be.
that could be a thing. I don't know.
Yeah, you just never know, right?
Yeah, I don't know. This one was a really interesting one. I wish there was more to grasp onto on the historical side to kind of ground some of these stories in reality. But the fact that there was even any kind of record of pirate activity, especially Blackbeard, was really cool. And I think that brings a level of intrigue here. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.
Yeah, you will.